Lenny Mira, State Representative Lenny back. Okay, so thanks Chris for coming up. Chris has been a friend for a long time, and in talking to people like Chris is one of the main reasons why I want to run. The entire country has real problems, and most of those are centered around the fact that there's no really good jobs. If we could get back on track on creating jobs that matter in this country instead of part-time jobs, we would have a lot fewer problems. So the other tidbits that actually got me involved in doing this were, I've been watching politics since I was 18 years old, 17 years old. Most people who are enlisted in the Army will do that just because that's where you know where your next assignment is coming from. And one of the things I've noticed in the last 10 years is that both sides spend an enormous amount of time demonizing the other one. And a lot of people my age look at that and go, this is ridiculous. I kind of agree with little bits from this side and little bits from that side. And the two extremes of the parties get both of us in trouble. The extreme right wing gets the Republicans in trouble. The extreme left wings get the Democrats in trouble. And the best answers are usually somewhere in the middle. The differences are, as a Republican, I like solving things from the small federal government perspective and let the states take care of all the details. The Democrats like solving things from the large centralized government perspective and let the states listen to that large federal government. And it's just a different way of solving problems. So I like to macro-manage instead of micromanage. So why else would a scientist want to get involved in these things? Well, one of the big ones is, things like today, the news broke that the House rejected stopping an NSA snooping program. I don't know if anybody saw that. There was an amendment offered up in the House that said, let's defund this NSA program that's been all over the news because Snowden, popped up and started releasing information. Well, the House rejected by a small margin stopping that program. It was actually an interesting vote because it was very bipartisan. There were Democrats and Republicans all over both sides of it. I think it was within 7 votes of actually being stopped. That kind of stuff, as a scientist, you look at and go, this is crazy. Constitutionally, you're not allowed to do what they're doing. So somebody's got to stand up and say, right is right and wrong is wrong. Trying to keep us safe is one thing, violating the Constitution is another. And that one to me is black and white. So one of the other reasons a scientist would, like myself would want to get involved is, at least then, in budget meetings, you're guaranteed to have somebody who knows how to add. You wouldn't necessarily run into instances where you now have large overruns. So I ran some numbers this afternoon on things I would change, things I'm passionate about getting done in my first year in Congress. So we all know we have a large deficit problem every year. I looked up the numbers this morning. Currently they're projecting this year's to be about $760 billion. So in 4 line items, I'm going to show you how we can solve 10% of that. On all of your tables, there's a way to get EBT fraud out of the system using fingerprint technology. That technology exists today. You don't have to invent anything to do it. A company in, where was it, Chris, New York? Yeah, a company in New York actually makes a device that does what you see outlined in that article I had on Pajamas Media. The projected fraud in the EBT system nationally, coast to coast, every year is $20 billion. Okay? $20 billion of our tax dollars is wasted in fraud in that system. I think EBT needs to exist. I think food stamps need to be there for families that need them. However, fraud in a system cannot be allowed if there's an easy technology way to solve the problem. So if you take that $20 billion and you look at it relative to $760 billion, you've just saved 2.5% of the deficit that we need to get to a balanced budget in one shot. 2.5%. If you look at how much the United States spends in foreign military assistance, anybody want to take a guess? I looked it up. $17.8 billion last year. 2.3% right there. This one drove me almost insane. I wanted to wrap duct tape around my head to find the pieces after it exploded. $31.7 billion in foreign economic assistance. So we're helping other economies when ours is going down the tubes. So there's 4.1%. Now this one is not quite as large, but I like it. The United Nations, in my opinion, has largely outlived its usefulness and is trying to saddle us with a bunch of stuff we should not be involved in. $6 billion a year, 0.8%, that gets us to 10%. Zero tax increases, 4 line items, and you've got 10% of that budget gap closed. There's 434 other congressional seats out there, and I'm hoping the rest of them can come up with the other 90%. Okay, no, I'm not hoping. I have plans to get to the other 90%. But that's 10% right off the top. So if we can go through that in just a few minutes and get to it, why can't the sitting Congress people do the same math? And the answer is they always look for these silver bullet solutions. They look for the keys to the kingdom in one fell swoop. That doesn't exist from an engineering perspective, from a scientific perspective. There is no magic bullet. You have to solve the problems one at a time that need to be solved to get to the best answer for the economy or our country as a whole. And that's the kind of thing a physicist does, and currently I'm employed as a system engineer, although my doctoral degree is in physics. System engineers do that sort of thing. Whatever the problem is, we don't care. It's a large system. You just break it down into its constituent pieces until you can build up the solution you need. Whether it's an economy or whether it's a Patriot missile system, the same answer applies. And interestingly, I will leave you with this thought before I go into three other things. Since I mentioned Patriot missile. Last time I was giving one of these talks, somebody found out I worked on Patriot missile, and they said, well, we were having trouble with North Korea at the time. And people said, well, can Patriot handle things coming out of North Korea? And I said, well, I don't know, it depends on what it is. But if nothing else, we can always parachute drop in Chuck Norris, and we solve the problem. A couple other numbers for you. One I found completely atrocious this morning. Jobs. The president loves to come out and say he's pivoting to the economy and jobs. Did you know, under this president, he has claimed to have created, or saved, which I'm still not sure how you do that. How do you calculate a saved job? To have created millions of jobs. Well, if you look at his numbers put out by his administration, he has actually added 2 Americans to the food stamp rolls for every 1 job he's claiming. 2 for 1. Interesting number. So that's the kind of thing that I think our Congress people should stand up there and say, look, this is ridiculous. We've got to get back to work. We've got to work with the entrepreneurs. We've got to remove regulations that are stopping us from creating jobs and get people off of the food stamp roll and into employment. That just needs to happen. It needs to start today. So one last thing, and then I'll let everybody get back to drinking. Let's talk about the incumbent for just a second. Nikki Saunders. As I understand it, I've never met her personally. I understand she's a very nice lady, one-on-one. However, I have some issues. She was giving a Twitter town hall recently in which she was answering questions from constituents from the safety of behind her computer screen. She got a question that said, and I quote, "Why have we not been told the truth about Benghazi?" Her answer made me want to throw things through my computer screen, and it was, Congress has been given many briefings on the subject. It's time to move on. I think our soldiers, our ambassadors, deserve better than that. Yeah. That ranks up there. That ranks up there with Hillary Clinton's comment about what difference does it make at this point. As I understand it, Nikki Saunders has a daughter, Hillary Clinton has a daughter. I think we should take one of their 2 daughters and nominate them as the next ambassador to that same country. And let's see what difference it makes now. So, on the IRS scandal, Nikki got the question about the IRS. And the same answer she got was, nothing to see here, move along, life is wonderful. It's a phony scandal. I saw that one on the news this morning. About 5 years ago, and this is more personal for me, I started donating a little bit of money to various Republican candidates. I've been audited consistently for the last 5 years. My wife, remember it was about 2 years ago, I sat up in our bedroom for a weekend doing paperwork because we got this audit that said you owed more dollars than you thought you did, so send us a check. Well, the amount of money they said we owed them was about 30% of what we made that year, give or take, and we'd already paid a whole bunch of money in taxes. So we looked at it and went, okay, if you look at it another way, the amount they say we owe is about half of what our take-home pay was. It was insane. Turned out they were wrong. They actually owed us $95. But the fact that I got this massive audit was just it was crazy. So the last thing I want to talk about is immigration. It's on everybody's mind these days. I got tagged with this one in email pretty harshly the other day because they said, I don't understand immigration, we just need to grant amnesty, blah, blah, blah. Because it's challenging to immigrate to this country. Well, sitting right over there is my lovely wife. I want to point out that this woman has had 3 children in 5 years and still looks fantastic. She immigrated to this country when she was, what, 15, honey? 15 years old. Did not speak English, okay? Went to college 1 year later than everybody else. Graduated with a 3.9 something. Jane, do I have that right? 3.9 something GPA in chemical engineering just a few years after learning the language. And then went on to Virginia Tech to graduate with a master's degree and a 4.0 in chemical engineering. And as she likes to point out, her grades are better than mine. She also points out that the doctoral degree doesn't really matter because she's an engineer and they know how to build things, but that's beside the point. So, immigration can be done. Does the process need to be streamlined? Absolutely. Could it be better? Do we need the same immigration policy for Canada that we apply to Iran? Absolutely not. Can we apply technology to make that process a much, much easier process to allow people in the country to stay? Sure. Can we put some common sense solutions out there that say, let's give people a green card so they have the ability to work, and if they don't commit felonies for 2 to 3 years, allow them to become citizens? I think we can all agree on something along those lines. Does it need to be a 9-year-long process in which you wait and fill out forms and pay lawyers tens of thousands of dollars? No, I don't think so. Not in the modern sense. We can figure out who needs to come in the country and who doesn't long before that. So with that, I'll quit talking and allow everybody to go back to drinking unless someone would like to ask a question or two.